Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to writing course 8 for the GATE English course on IELTS exam preparation. My name is Gavin Scott, and it's wonderful to have you all here again in what is going to be our 8th video of these series. For me, it's only been about 5 minutes since I finished filming the last video, but it might have been a week for you guys. So today what we're going to look at is practicing the whole two-sided essay. I'm just going to go through the process from start to finish, and then we're going to take some time looking at conclusions. So this is just a real in-depth analysis of the writing process. Generally in this course, that's kind of what we're focusing on, the process, the organization, the thinking of how to get the higher marks, rather than actual sentences and grammar structures themselves. If there's any particular thing like that you wanted to focus on, leave a question with the contact details I'll put up at the end. If there is something that you want to know about grammar, vocabulary, sentence structure, any specific little thing, send those through. And if I find some common questions, I'll answer those in my 10th video. So first of all, just a quick look at what I showed you in the last video. Essentially, this is the structure I'm going to use for a two-sided essay. 2 BPs for my side, 1 BP for the other side. Okay, and very important to set up that opinion right at the beginning in our introduction. Okay, so if you haven't seen that or if you've forgotten about that, you can pause the video and look through that in detail, but I'm not going to read through all of that again. Okay, what I am going to do is take you through the process. First thing you do, you get that paper, you sit down and you see the question. Don't start writing too quickly. Look at the question, analyze it. What kind of question is it? First of all, you need to recognize that it's a two-sided question. And we're going to do that in a bit more detail later and talk about that. Secondly, you've got to start thinking about the ideas for both sides. Now, you see that I've put this ahead of choosing your position. Don't just jump in with your position and try to justify it. Because sometimes what you will find is if you think about it for a while and think of the arguments for both sides, look at those arguments, you might say, well, I kind of think this side is better, but there's some good arguments there as well. In fact, that side's actually probably easier to write about. Do that, Sometimes one side is just easier to write for. And this is not about your opinion. This is about getting your IELTS score to a higher level. So maybe pick the side that you can come up with more ideas for or better ideas for. So that's why I always recommend you choose the position after you've taken time to brainstorm. You should know the word brainstorm. If you don't, it just means to think of as many ideas as you possibly can. You can write them down or you could just do it in your mind, in the room. Just go, okay, this reason, this reason, this reason. Or you can get your piece of paper and write them down. I would take to do this first 2 steps and 3 steps really, and the 4th step to then think about how you're going to organize those arguments. Okay, here's all the possible arguments. Okay, this is the best one and this is another good one for my side. Okay, that's probably what I'll talk about for the other side. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put this one first, this one second, this one third. Those first 4 steps there, I would recommend that takes about 4 to 5 minutes for task 2. It's really important to think as much as you can to get those ideas out. So that's something I would recommend you doing. After that, you can get started and write the introduction. Now, if you practice introductions from a few lessons ago with me and practice a lot more, you should be able to write your introduction in just 3 or 4 minutes or less. It should not take you too long. Quick topic statement introducing the situation, and then my opinion statement. Again, we'll have a look at one of those later today. And if you need to go back and look at that, I believe that was in video 5 that we started with introductions. Okay, so after you've written your introduction, you're going to write your BP1. Then I would recommend you take, say, 30 seconds to a minute to just quickly read your BP1 again at the end. Don't just finish writing and move on. Always go back and read that last sentence, or actually, that last paragraph or that last sentence. Then just think, okay, so now that I've written that, let's think, what was my point for BP2? Okay, let's do that. So again, you've spent maybe 4 minutes up here, but then you're spending another minute at each point here. So that overall, you're going to spend only 30 minutes on the actual writing. You're going to spend 10 minutes on thinking and planning and reviewing. Okay, write your BP2, review, repeat. We're basically repeating those steps. Finally, at the end, write your conclusion and review and edit everything that you have just done if you have time. Now, the reason why I say here that you should do a review here, review here is because, you know, if you do it right at the end, it might be too difficult to fix the changes. Okay, but at this point, you might just do one final read. The last 2 minutes, just read the whole thing through from start to finish. Okay, at the very least, you want to be doing that when you finish. Now, of course, some of you might say, but I don't have time to do all of this. I can't write that much. Well, again, if you're thinking at the right time, it will make it easier to do the writing. Now, just pick up a pen and write something with 250 words. The writing of it actually probably only takes you about 10 to 15 minutes of just the writing. You know, it's the fact that you're writing, pausing, thinking, writing, pausing, thinking. You know, your hand can move fast enough to do the writing. Okay. So, oh, and another important thing, the hand muscles, if you haven't done a lot of handwriting lately. So I know that, say, well, probably anyone at university and high school probably still does a lot. But say, for example, in a lot of students in Australian universities, they use a computer in the classroom and they don't write by hand very much. And if you haven't written by hand for a very long time, say since you finished high school, you go in maybe in your second or third year of university, you haven't done a lot of writing by hand, your hand muscles get tired very quickly. So you should practice your handwriting just to get your hands strong so that you can write really quickly and clearly as well. Make sure your writing is understandable. Okay, so what we're going to do now for probably most of today's class is to work our way through those 9 steps. Okay, so let's have a look. Analyze the question. So this is the question we're going to look at today. Many museums charge for admission while others are free. Do you think the advantages of charging people for admission to museums outweigh the disadvantages? Okay, so first of all, we can see it's a two-sided question. Basically, is it good to charge people to go into museums? That's basically the first thing. Basically, are museums free, or should museums be free or not? Pretty simple. Let's just double check a few words. Charge for admission. Maybe you don't know the word admission. That basically means to pay to go in. And it's basically advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Now, that basically means that there's probably advantages and disadvantages to both. But do you think that one outweighs the other? And you really should say yes. You shouldn't say no, they are exactly the same and the advantages and disadvantages are equal. The whole point is, do you think they should charge for admission? That's what you need to think about. Now, maybe you're not sure. So let's think about this and start brainstorming for ideas. Now, normally this is something that, if it was me, I probably wouldn't write things down, but some people are like that. They like to write things down or they won't be able to remember it later, or the thoughts don't come out of your brain if you don't write them down. So whatever works for you, write them down on a scrap piece of paper, not the main paper, on a scrap side piece of paper. You'll have a bit of paper on the side that you can write on and come up with some ideas for both sides. So let's have a think. If you want, pause the video. What are some reasons why we should charge for museums? Why should we pay money? Oh, sorry. I'm saying my first one is actually why should museums be free? Sorry about that. So why should museums be free? Okay. So it's actually not really it's for free museums. My point here, that, this way we get to educate more people. And education is, of course, quite an important thing. It's also about teaching about culture and history of the country or the city. So letting people know about your culture and history. And a third one is it attracts more tourists. And of course, that's a fairly obvious one. The more tourists coming into the city means more money coming into the city. So there's a few arguments for why we should have free museums. What about the second part? Why shouldn't we have free museums? Okay, so again, if you want to pause the video and think, feel free to do that. Okay, try to come up with 3 ideas for each side if you can. Okay, my arguments that I came up with, well, if they're free, too many people will go there. They'll get very crowded. Second thing would be that, well, if they don't get money, then they might not be very nice museums. If they're free, they don't have the money to make a good museum. And that kind of comes to the third point that, you know, if governments have to spend lots of money on the museums because they're free, that's less money the governments have to spend on hospitals and schools and things like that. Okay, now, look at those two and think about which one you can argue about. Now, I kind of feel like these two are very similar to each other. Based on my travels and my experience, I've come up with my opinion. So what's your opinion? Who thinks free? Okay, quite a lot of you. Who thinks we should charge money? Probably the majority of people watching this video think we should charge money. Okay, that's what we'll write about. I believe museums should not be free. Okay. Oh, by the way, I have done this topic with students before, and of course, hundreds and hundreds of students. Yeah, I probably have had this topic for several years. I've been using it. Probably it is fairly even with some people thinking one side and some people thinking the other. Sometimes everyone believes this side, but some questions it's kind of balanced. So that's what I'm going to write about. I'm going to write to you guys, to the reader, the IELTS examiner, why museums shouldn't be free. So I'm going to organize my arguments. I'm going to go with the fact that it's too crowded, and then that because there's not enough money, that means the museums can't develop and they become quite bad museums. I'm going to choose the fact that it educates people, or more people can be educated by museums if they're free. Okay, so these are the 3 ideas I'm going to go from if I've taken them from here. I'm not going to take all of them, I'm just going to pick 2 from my side and 1 from the other side. The others, you can just forget about them. So we've got those 3 things there. Now I'm going to write my introduction. So this is actually a good chance for us to practice our introduction again. Okay, so remember we have a topic sentence, a topic statement, and an opinion statement. A topic statement does not introduce the 2 sides yet. It just introduced museums, you know, the topic of museums and people going to museums. Okay, so pause the video and write your introduction. Okay, and when you're finished, come back to look at my introduction. Okay, welcome back. So let's have a look. I started with a topic statement. For tourists visiting a new city, one of the first places they visit is a museum to learn about that place. Okay, so nothing special. That's a very basic topic statement. You know, every city has a museum. It's place. Whenever I go to any new country, I usually visit a museum. You know, it's nice to know about the place you're visiting. My opinion statement. Some governments offer free entry to these cultural places in order to educate more people. Yet I believe most museums should charge at least some money to stop overcrowding in those museums. You see, I say most museums, at least some money. You know, I'm saying that I'm not very, very strongly to one side. My opinion is on this side, but it's not 100% over there. Okay, so now we've done that, let's get our BP1 started. Point, example, explain. PEE. Okay, so again, looking back at the question, if you need to, could you please write your PEE and then pause the video and write your PEE and then come back to me in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so my point. The main reason why museums should charge entry is because there would be too many tourist crowds if there were no fee. My example, famous places like the Louvre in Paris or MoMA, which is the Museum of Modern Art in New York, are already packed with visitors despite high ticket prices. I've been to both of those museums or art galleries. Okay. Without such cost, there would be 2 or 3 times the number of people filling the halls. Okay, so we've written our BP and we're just going to go back and have a quick look at it. Did I have any mistakes in there? Oh, I think I did. So can you see my mistakes?